Hey guys, my name's Nick. I'm a Microsoft Certified Expert Administrator. Create a lot of content for MSPs. In today's video, I'm going to show you a little bit of breakdown on getting started with Microsoft Defender ATP. So when we look at Microsoft Defender Advanced Threat Protection, definitely has a lot to the solution here that you do have to learn, which is why I wanted to create this video here to show you a little bit of roadmap items that you can create, slowly roll this out to get acclimated to the solution, but also to understand the fundamentals, because it should get easier after you learn the fundamentals to scale this across multiple customers, and there will be consistencies in your roadmap items in the long term that you can span across all customers versus just the one while you look at rolling out some of these solutions here. So again, this can be really overwhelming if you go into the portal today and try to navigate all the settings right out of the gate. But you should be understanding first the scope of the services and devices that you'll encompass here. Some of that includes the platforms that Defender ATP supports, like Android, Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. The other is also understanding the versions that you'll have to have it on for certain features or for certain protections that come part of the solution, like the attack surface reduction, the Nextgen Protection, and things like that. So all these things fall under the scope. You want to take that then and compare it to a spec sheet of the existing customer devices to see who's compatible. The next thing here is pricing and licensing. So as I mentioned in the previous video, this is now $520 a user a month standalone. You can bolt it on to Microsoft 365 business SKUs now here as well too. You have to understand though the licensing models that you would want to adopt. So other videos will cover this in the sense of what kinds of bundles that you would want to create to get the best performance, and also understand the limitations of OS potentially, but also with your licensing packages. Lastly here, you want to understand some of the differences in licensing when it comes to certain feature sets that won't be available to you if you have Windows 10 Pro instead of Windows 10 Enterprise, for instance. So knowing that beforehand will save you a lot of time. Lastly here, the onboarding methods that you have available to you are various, and you'll want to decide for your environment what you want to deploy with. You can use Microsoft Intune. It's one of the easiest ways if devices are already enrolled. You could potentially use your RMM tool to turn this on for existing Windows 10 devices. And you could also use local group policy to push out and turn these things on. Remember again, this is not an agent that you're actually deploying. It's just already built in and baked into the OS. Simply turning it on and pointing it towards your tenant as far as the device goes. So when we think about a roadmap here, when I think about the first 30 days, you first want to define roles and responsibilities in the company here. Generally, I encompass this into 3 separate roles and responsibilities you might have in the organization. IT admin, SecOps, and SecAdmin are the 3 I consider to be most important when you think about the deployment. IT admin is doing the patches of the OS, they're doing the software deployments, they're creating base level policies that come down from the SecAdmin. The SecAdmin is the one who's defining the policies, determining the assumed risk that the organization is taking, and also triages various alerts through the organizations to bring down to the SecOps individual, who then picks up those tasks and does more of the investigation and remediation of those tasks as well. They're also going to be the person who's taking all the alerts and making sure that they're in a fully remediated state, or reviewing what's being auto-remediated in the account. So having these roles defined prematurely there is going to be very important before you start to roll out these to the organization in any customer environment. Next here we have the onboarding of pilot devices. So you want to go ahead and gather telemetry in the environment for the EDR piece of the solution here. You also want to gauge what kind of solutions or what kind of things you're going to come across in a lot of your customer environments. So within your 365 Admin Center, after you've licensed and purchased Microsoft Defender ATP, under all admin centers you have Microsoft Defender ATP listed. And if you select that, you'll be taken through this onboarding wizard that will walk you through some of your initial settings here, like setting up the data storage location, setting up the data retention policy, which the maximum is 6 months, and then defining some of the other settings here as well too, like turning on some of the preview features, and then you can click on continue. This will take about 5 to 10 minutes to finish creating, and I'll skip ahead here just for the sake of time, just to show you guys. Once that's done, you'll have your list of available options for onboarding. You should have already investigated this to know which one's going to be best for you. But in a lot of cases there, you can use this portal as well too to open up these support articles from Microsoft directly to help you with the onboarding if you have not gotten to that step yet. Highly advise investigating that first though. From there, after you've onboarded a device, you can use that little script there to run a detection test. After it's complete, you want to go ahead and operationalize EDR. And so with that, that's where you take your defined responsibilities and roles and really begin to navigate the portal to get your feet wet with some of the settings and start to consume some of the alerts that may be going on in the tenant. So after you have your devices onboarded, you'll have them listed here. They'll be given a risk level and exposure level. Note that this does take roughly 30 minutes to an hour from what I've experienced to fully populate with these settings here and propagate within the tenant. The other things that you can look into are the active alerts on those particular devices and some of the automated investigations that are already going on. Remember, out of the box here, there's not going to be any fully automated remediation activities that go on. They will require you to approve those actions. So there's nothing going to be automatically triggering to automatically remediate incidents that might show up on these devices that you have in pilot. But just know that this is a great time for the SEC admin to review this, to start defining some policies you might want to have in here. It's a good time for the SecOps analyst to come in and start reviewing some of the incidents and some of the alerts that are within the tenant here as well too. And this stuff, guys, by the way, is all things I'm going to go in depth on in other videos. But this is a good way to get started, get your feet wet with the solution itself, and understand how it's bundling these alerts into incidents within the portal. So that's great for the first 30 days, just to get your feet wet with the solution, get a firm understanding of what's maybe going on in the tenant that you will have to address and start defining some policies. Next thing here is to enable Nextgen Protection. This is the antivirus settings from Microsoft Windows Defender. And this is something that I would do on those pilot devices after you've set this up. And this is something where you're going to the next tier of the solution stack with Microsoft. And so back within this portal here, this is where you want to start to turn on and enable some of the antivirus settings. So the IT administrator or the SEC admin is most likely going to be the person who does that. So if you're back in the all admin centers here, you're going to come into the endpoint manager, and here you'll go ahead and select endpoint security. And from here, you can select antivirus and begin to create policies, specifically for Windows 10 or Mac OS. And when you create this here, it'll go through and act like a wizard through setting up a name, the description, and every configuration setting that you want to turn on. This is not part of the scope of this particular video. I just wanted to show you guys where you would go. Next, you want to go ahead and define your workflows with the threat and vulnerability management. So this is after you've gotten tons of the telemetry in the account here. You can then begin to work with your team on operationalizing threat and vulnerability management for this tenant so that you can scale across all of your customers. So back within the Defender Security Center, you can go into the threat and vulnerability management dashboard. This is where you can see the exposure from devices that have come up as risky. You can have your secure score for devices here that you can drill down into, and you can see your exposure level. This is just a test tenant, so it's at 0, but you'll see your exposure level, and obviously the lower that is, the better. You can also look at the top security recommendations here and evaluate if this is something that you should pass on as a SEC admin to your IT admin for remediation, or also to the SecOps analyst to then go and do as a task. So you can choose here to review the description, and you can see user impact, which is really cool. So you can see only 50% of your exposed devices will have user impact. So this may be not something that you want to turn on right away until you explore this a little bit further. You can create exception options here for certain justification reasons, like accepted risk, for instance, or just being in a grace period. And you can also go ahead and just select to set the request remediation for devices with no expected user impact, which is really great. And you can set a priority and a due date and things like that. And this is what's passed along then to the sec admin potentially if you wanted to pull these things up. But it's getting in a good process of being proactive in what's actually in your tenant and understanding, what is actually a priority that we should go in and do, and what we are assuming is assume risk in the organization. This is great because most of the time, a lot of these settings here that you see are going to be consistent across each of your tenants. So if you get this down once in one tenant, along with some of the weaknesses, CVE area here, you'll basically have a great foundation for understanding how this is going to scale across all organizations that you manage with this particular solution. Next, we can define device groups within the portal. So device groups, you can think of something where you want to tag things together for enhanced search, but also you might want to provide more full automation capabilities for remediation to certain device groups, and some others you may not want to do that. You may want to be more hands-on in reviewing the recommendations from the automated investigation that occurs. So back within the Defender Security Center, if you come down into the settings here, you can go into the device group section, and this is where you can add device groups. The cool part is you can tag by certain names or domains and OSs, and it'll give you a preview of the members here. And you can also set the remediation level. So you can do all folders, non-temp folders, core folders, or full, which is a pretty good separation of everything that you see here. And you can also, if you set up Azure AD groups here with Microsoft Defender ATP administrative roles, you can assign them as being able to see these device groups. So if you're a large enough MSP, it may be that you give certain device groups to certain people within your company to go then and manage, and you stratify the devices across different people. And maybe that's across different platforms. Maybe you have one member who's just managing the Macs, and then another who's more of a SME on the Windows devices or something like that. Next here, last year in the 60-day period, you want to start enabling auto remediation. So again, this is after you've gotten pretty comfortable with the kinds of alerts going on in the tenant. You've gotten a better idea of the things that will come up. You understand user impact, and you want to start automating most of these tasks. That's usually always going to be the eventual goal we want to have in any tenant. So with that, that's when you can start to assign more devices to that full automation group, so you can begin to auto remediate a lot of those tasks. Back in the portal here, if you go under the automated investigations, you'll be able to see them after the fact if you want to at least do a periodic review. And then when you come in here, you can see the incident and all of the details and the recommended actions and everything that it did here for the actual remediation. You can go to the investigation page to see what was done, and you can see the results here and all the necessary information, and you can see this type of action that was taken in order to quarantine the file here. So you have a full list of an audit trail as far as that goes, and you can decide what to do. In some cases, if it's auto remediated and they quarantined a file or removed a file, you can restore that file if you want as well too. So you do have some type of rollback activity as well in case it performed an action that you did not want it to do. Next here, you want in the 90 plus days moving forward here, you want to go ahead and integrate it with your PSA tool as far as the alerting goes. So you can connect to your PSA tool with Flow or different aspects via the API if you want, just so you can get that consolidated activity going into your PSA tool for alerts versus having to go into Partner Center and go into Microsoft Windows Defender ATP to view those or get them via email or something like that. It can be intelligently routed to the PSA tool, or honestly, if you're a large organization, integrate with something like ServiceNow, for instance. You can integrate with their ticketing system as well too. Next here, you want to enable ASR policies, attack surface reduction. So attack surface reduction policies include things like exploit protection. They include things like application guard and hardware isolation, things like that. But I would mention that most of the features that are part of this and the policies that you can set up for this are part of the Windows 10 Enterprise OS, not Windows 10 Pro. So just keep that in mind. I'm catering this to the Microsoft business side of things here, not the enterprise level suites. So in most cases, I don't think these computers will have Windows 10 Enterprise. So just keep that in mind whenever you're looking to enable this. This may be something you actually just skip over in a lot of cases because you don't have that set up with your OS. Some of the things that you can set up though are some of the web protection rules where you can set up block sites based off of specific content. You can actually create custom block lists that allow less for URLs. You can filter web requests there based off of sensitive content like adult content or certain things that you would want to filter out like social networking sites, things like that. You can also define whitelist file hashes and things like that as well too. Most likely this is something that evolves over time, but this also leads you to being able to enable remote work. So with this is actually giving you a lot of protection on the endpoint itself without having your traditional network with a firewall and all of your firewall rules and network rules that are local. You can now extend this to remote workers and have everything based out of this cloud-based environment. You can also incorporate Intune as well too, to then navigate some of the compliance policies or conditional access policies that would say if this is a high-risk device, then I'm not allowing them to access corporate resources. So those are some great things that you can do to enable the remote workforce with this particular solution, moving away from traditional environments. Last thing here that I want to touch on, or second to last thing here, is advanced investigation techniques. So after you've gotten a firm foundation with all the other pieces we touched on here, the ASR, Nextgen Protection, EDR, Threat and Vulnerability Management, and automated investigation response, the next thing you can do is try to do more proactive searches. In the portal here, you're able to run specific queries in the KQL language here to do more targeted searches for creating new alerts, things like that. You can create detection rules off of these searches. You can leverage the community's shared queries here that they found as well too for lateral movements. These are all posted on GitHub. You can just run the query and create detection rules off of this as well too. So there may be something unique to the environment you want to investigate a little bit further, or if you've had the automated response techniques or automated investigation lead to something, you may need to use the advanced hunting to search even further. The other piece to this is the advanced features here for live response, which allows you to enable a remote session into the device itself to run some more heightened scripting material there, or allows you to navigate through the folders to do a little bit deeper dive without having to have a third-party tool to remote connect like Screen Connect or TeamViewer or something like that. So whenever you're on this particular device, you can choose to initiate a live response session here, which will open up a new page for you. And it's connecting to the device right now. So if the device is on, it'll connect and you'll be able to run certain commands. Again, it's not part of the scope of this video, but I just wanted to show you what that actually looked like here. And the last one here you want to do moving forward is obviously just periodically review all of your settings and iterate over time. This is where you can get into some of the threat analytics and some of the additional reporting from all of the software that's also installed on your devices as well too, to build better policies and to get more proactive with your threat investigation techniques as well. In the portal here, you can, under the main page here, go to Threat Analytics, and this is again Microsoft's security team here publishing new related content towards new threats that have come up globally or regionally, and they give you an executive summary analysis, a kill chain, and things like that that can specifically alert you to these types of actions, and they can show you what devices are exposed to this in your environment, if at all. but this at least allows you to be more proactive and see new threats that are emerging, to be, I guess, in the sec admin perspective, a little bit more proactive in the kinds of policies that you define, or some things that you might change in the sense of workflows, or look out for when you're thinking about scanning software that you're looking to onboard that you previously wouldn't have. So it's a definite growing opportunity, and the same thing here in the weaknesses here in the known CVEs. You can monitor this over time to see if there's any known CVEs on the software that's deployed across the organization, and you can be more proactive about what kind of threat that is, and also be more proactive about the things that you triage or take on as assumed risk for a particular organization. And this should get easier as you build that knowledge over time. So this has been a summary here of our roadmap of what we've just covered here. Keep in mind, these will be videos that I'm coming out with to do deep dives on everything that you've seen. I just did a high level overview so you get a better idea. This is what I recommend though, as far as slowly rolling this out to gain that intelligence internally, and then be able to scale this across your customer base if you decide this is a good solution for them. Please like or subscribe if you guys want to see more content around Microsoft 365 or the MSP space. Stay tuned for the next video I'll have out soon here for Microsoft Defender ATP.